Corporal Jake Miller shook before every mission, not a small tremor, not a barely visible nervousness. His hands shook hard enough that other soldiers noticed. His legs trembled as he geared up. Sweat beaded on his forehead even in the cold Afghan morning. The other soldiers in his platoon noticed everything. "Look at Miller," they whispered. "Already shaking, and we haven't even left the wire yet. Guy is terrified. How did he make it through basic? Coward." That is what they called him when they thought he could not hear. Sometimes they said it loud enough that he definitely could. Miller heard every word, never responded, just kept strapping on his gear with those shaking hands, kept showing up for every mission despite the fear that was visible on his face. He had been deployed for 4 months, had gone on over 30 patrols, and every single time he looked like he was about to fall apart from terror. But he never refused a mission, never stayed back, never let the fear stop him from doing his job. The other soldiers did not understand that. They saw the shaking and assumed weakness, assumed he would break when things got bad, assumed he was one firefight away from freezing up and getting someone killed. They were wrong about Jake Miller, because when the grenade bounced into their bunker during a mortar attack, Jake did not freeze, did not run, did not hesitate for even a fraction of a second. He threw himself on top of it, and in the 3 seconds before the blast, the soldiers who had called him coward realized what real courage looked like. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe so you never miss these true tales of courage. And tell us in the comments, where are you watching from today? Jake Miller had always been afraid, not of everything, not paralyzed by fear, but he felt it more intensely than other people seemed to. The what-ifs, the dangers, the 1,000 ways things could go wrong. In civilian life, he managed it, worked as a mechanic, fixed cars, lived a quiet life in Ohio where the biggest danger was a slipped wrench or a hot engine. But at 23, he made a decision that surprised everyone who knew him. He joined the Army. His friends thought he was crazy. "Jake, you are afraid of everything. Why would you join the military?" "Because I am tired of being afraid," he said. "Tired of letting fear control my life. If I can do this, then maybe I can prove to myself that I am not a coward." Basic training was the hardest thing Jake had ever done, not because of the physical demands. He was strong, good at push-ups and running, but because fear lived in his chest every single day. Fear of failing, fear of not being good enough, fear of the drill sergeants, fear of letting down his platoon. His hands shook during weapons training. His voice cracked when he had to call out commands. Other recruits noticed. Some were understanding, others were not. The ones who were not started calling him Shakes, making jokes about whether he would drop his weapon in combat, wondering out loud how he passed the psych evaluation. Jake heard it all, tried to prove them wrong by working harder, by never quitting no matter how scared he was. He graduated basic training, made it through infantry school, got assigned to a combat unit deploying to Afghanistan. His father pulled him aside before deployment. "Son, you do not have to do this. Nobody will think less of you if you request a transfer to something safer." Jake shook his head. "I made it this far, Dad. I am seeing it through. What if you freeze up when bullets start flying? What if the fear is too much? Then I will deal with it when it happens. But I have to try. I have to know if I can do this." His father hugged him. "I am proud of you, son. Scared for you, but proud." Afghanistan was everything Jake had feared and worse. The heat, the constant threat, the sounds of distant gunfire that made his heart race, the knowledge that every patrol could be the one where something went horribly wrong, and his fear showed. Visibly, obviously, before every mission, Jake's hands shook as he loaded magazines. His legs trembled as he climbed into the vehicle. His breathing came fast and shallow as they rolled out of the gate. The other soldiers noticed immediately. Sergeant Hayes, the platoon sergeant, pulled Jake aside after the first week. "Miller, you okay? You look like you are about to have a panic attack every time we gear up." "I am fine, Sergeant. I can do my job. I am not questioning that. But if the fear is too much, we can get you some help. Talk to the chaplain. Maybe adjust your duties." Jake shook his head firmly. "No, Sergeant. I signed up for this. I am not backing out." Hayes studied him, nodded slowly. "All right. But if you need help, you come find me." That is an order. Jake never went to find help. He just kept showing up, kept going on patrols with hands that shook and legs that trembled. And the whispers started. Private Marcus Webb was the loudest voice in the whispers. He was everything Jake was not. Confident, fearless looking, The kind of soldier who joked through dangerous situations and never seemed rattled. Webb started calling Jake Shakes within the first month. The nickname spread through the platoon like wildfire. "Hey Shakes, you going to drop your rifle today?" Shakes looked like he is about to cry. "And we haven't even left base yet. I don't want Shakes covering my six. Guy will probably run at the first shot." Jake heard it all. Never responded. Never defended himself. Just kept doing his job. But the words cut deep. Deeper than bullets would have. Because part of Jake wondered if they were right. If he really was a coward. If the fear that lived in his chest meant he was broken somehow. 3 months into deployment, the platoon hit their first serious firefight. An ambush on a resupply route. RPGs and machine gun fire from elevated positions. The kind of situation that makes even veterans feel the spike of adrenaline and fear. Jake was in the third vehicle when the shooting started. His hands were shaking so badly he almost dropped his rifle pulling it up. His heart hammered in his chest. His mouth went dry, but he returned fire. Aimed at muzzle flashes on the ridge. Squeezed the trigger with shaking hands. Kept shooting even though everything in him wanted to curl up and hide. The firefight lasted 8 minutes. Felt like hours. When it was over, the platoon had taken no casualties. Enemy forces had retreated. Everyone dismounted to check vehicles and regroup. Jake's hands were still shaking. He could not make them stop. Webb saw it. Laughed loud enough for everyone to hear. "Look at Shakes. Still trembling like a leaf. Did you even hit anything, or were you just spraying and praying?" Jake did not answer. Just reloaded his magazines with those shaking hands. But Sergeant Hayes had been watching. He walked over to Webb. "Shut your mouth, Private." Miller returned fire same as everyone else. Did his job. That is all that matters. Webb shut up. But the damage was done. The platoon had seen Jake shaky during the firefight, and in their minds they confirmed everything. He was scared. Scared, not reliable in combat. Jake knew what they thought, knew they doubted him, and he could not blame them because he doubted himself too. At night in his bunk he lay awake wondering if they were right, if he was putting his brothers at risk by being there, if he should request transfer to a non-combat role. But every morning he got up, put on his gear with shaking hands, went on patrol despite the fear that never went away. Because cowards quit, and whatever else Jake Miller was, he was not a quitter. He would prove that in the worst way possible. The attack came in 0 to 30 hours. Jake was asleep in the bunker he shared with 5 other soldiers. Webb, Hayes, 3 others. The first mortar hit the perimeter. The explosion jolted everyone awake. Before they could fully process what was happening, the second mortar hit closer, then the third, fourth. A barrage walking across the base. Incoming. Everyone to the bunker. The shout came from somewhere outside. They were already in the bunker, the safest place on base during a mortar attack. Reinforced concrete, sandbags, built to withstand indirect fire. The soldiers grabbed their helmets and body armor, crouched in the bunker, waited for the attack to pass. Jake's hands were shaking. As always, his heart raced, mouth dry. Every impact of a mortar made him flinch. Webb noticed even now, even in the middle of an attack. Corps Shakes is terrified. "Look at him shaking." "Shut up, Webb." Hayes' voice was sharp. "We are all scared right now." "I am not scared." Webb shot back. "I am ready. If they breach the perimeter, I am ready to fight." But Miller looks like he is about to pass out. Jake said nothing, just pressed himself against the concrete wall. Tried to control his breathing. Tried to stop shaking and could not. Another mortar hit. This one close enough that dust rained down from the ceiling. The bunker shook. Then they heard it. A sound that made everyone freeze. The metallic clink of something bouncing down the bunker steps. For one terrible second, nobody moved. Nobody processed what that sound meant. Then they saw it. A grenade, rolling across the concrete floor, coming to rest in the center of the bunker about 6 feet from where they crouched. Grenade. Hayes' voice cut through the shock. Time slowed down in that moment. The way it does when death arrives and the brain tries to process too much information at once. The grenade had maybe 3 seconds before it exploded. Maybe 4. Not enough time to get out of the bunker. Not enough time to do anything except maybe dive for cover and hope. 6 soldiers. 6 lives. About to enter the confined concrete space where the blast would kill or maim everyone. Jake Miller saw the grenade. Saw his brothers frozen in shock. Saw death sitting there on the concrete floor. And he did not think. Did not hesitate. Did not let fear stop him. He lunged forward. threw his entire body on top of the grenade, wrapped himself around it. His voice came out calm, calmer than it had ever been. "Get out, Doc, go now." The other soldiers stared at him for half a second in disbelief. Then training and survival instinct kicked in. They ran, scrambled up the bunker steps, got as far away as they could. In the 3 seconds they had left, Jake stayed, body curled around the grenade, arms tucked, underneath, head down. He was not shaking anymore. His hands were steady. His mind was clear. He thought about his father, thought about proving he was not a coward, thought about the soldiers who called him sheiks, but who were his brothers anyway. And he thought, this is it. This is what I was meant to do. Save them. The grenade exploded. The explosion was muffled. Contained by Jake's body, the soldiers outside the bunker felt the concussion, heard the sound, knew what had happened. For a long moment nobody moved. Nobody spoke. They just stood there in the darkness, illuminated by flares and fires, processing what Jake Miller had just done. Webb was the first to break. He ran back to the bunker entrance, screaming, "No, Miller, Jake." Sergeant Hayes grabbed him, pulled him back. "Private, do not go in there. You cannot help him now. He saved us." Webb's voice cracked. He threw himself on the grenade. The coward, the guy we called sheiks. He saved all of us. Hayes' voice was thick. He was not a coward. He never was. Medics arrived, went into the bunker, came out 2 minutes later shaking their heads. The expression on their faces said everything. Corporal Jake Miller was dead, had died instantly. The grenade had detonated against his body armor, and the blast had been mostly absorbed by his torso. His sacrifice had worked. The other 5 soldiers had minor injuries from the concussion, but they were alive, all because Jake had not hesitated, had not let fear stop him, had done the one thing that cowards never do. He had given his life for his brothers. The platoon gathered outside the bunker as the sun started to rise. Nobody knew what to say. How do you process the fact that the soldier you mocked, the one you called scared, the one you doubted, had just died saving your life? Webb sat on the ground, head in his hands, crying openly. I called him a coward. I told him he would run when it mattered, and he did not even hesitate. He just threw himself on it. Hayes sat down beside him. He proved what real courage is. Private courage is not the absence of fear. It is doing what needs to be done despite being terrified. Miller was scared every single day, and every single day he showed up anyway. That is the definition of bravery. But we made fun of him. We called him sheiks. We made him feel like he did not belong. Hayes' voice was hard. Then we learned from this. We honor him by never making that mistake again, by understanding that the soldiers who shake might be the bravest ones in the unit. Word spread through the base quickly. The soldier who shook before every mission had thrown himself on a grenade, had saved 5 soldiers, had died without hesitation. The story reached command, reached battalion, reached brigade, eventually reached the Pentagon. 6 weeks later, Jake Miller's parents stood in a ceremony at the White House. The president draped a Medal of Honor around the neck of a framed photo of their son. The citation read, "For conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of his life above and beyond the call of duty." But the words that mattered most came from Private Marcus Webb, who stood in that ceremony in his dress uniform, who had requested permission to speak. Webb stood at the podium, voice shaking now, hands trembling, understanding for the first time what Jake had felt every single day. I called Corporal Miller a coward. We all did. We saw him shake before missions, saw the fear on his face, and we assumed that made him weak. We were wrong, dead wrong. Webb took a breath. His voice grew stronger. Jake Miller was the bravest soldier I ever served with, not because he was not afraid, but because he was terrified and did it anyway. He went on every patrol with hands that shook. He did his job with fear in his eyes. And when the moment came, when it mattered most, he did not think about himself, did not hesitate, did not run. He threw himself on a grenade to save us, the guys who had called him a coward. And his last words were, "Get out, go now." Webb's voice broke. I am alive because a man I mocked gave his life for me, and I will spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of that sacrifice. Real courage is not the absence of fear. Real courage is feeling fear and doing your duty anyway. Jake Miller had more courage in his shaking hands than most of us will ever have. The ceremony ended, but Jake's story did not. It spread through the Army, through every training base, every unit, Drill sergeants told recruits about the soldier who shook before every mission and became a Medal of Honor recipient. The nickname Shakes took on a different meaning. It became a term of respect, a reminder that fear and courage were not opposites, that the soldiers who showed fear might be the ones with the most strength. Years later, a training facility was named after Jake, the Miller Courage Center, where soldiers learned that being afraid did not make you weak, that showing up despite fear was the highest form of bravery. Jake's father attended the dedication, spoke to the young soldiers gathered there. My son was afraid every day of his deployment. He called me once and said, "Dad, I don't know if I can do this. I am scared all the time." I told him, "Fear is not weakness, son. Fear is your mind telling you the danger is real. Courage is answering that fear with 'I know, but I am doing it anyway.'" That is what my son did every single day. Until the day he died saving his brothers, the soldiers listened. Some of them were struggling with their own fears, wondering if they were cut out for service, wondering if the trembling hands or racing heart meant they were not strong enough. Jake's story told them something they needed to hear. That courage was not about being fearless. It was about being afraid and serving anyway, about shaking hands that still pulled triggers, about terror that did not stop you from doing your duty, and about the truth that sometimes the soldiers who shake the most have the steadiest hearts. Private Webb served another 12 years, rose to sergeant first class, and every time he trained a new soldier who showed fear, he would tell them about Jake Miller, the coward who was not, the hero who shook, the man who proved that bravery and fear could live in the same heart. And every night before sleep, Webb remembered the man who saved his life, the brother he had mocked, the hero he had misunderstood, and he made sure that Jake Miller's name would never be forgotten. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is doing what needs to be done despite being terrified. The soldiers who shake might be the bravest ones, the ones who show up afraid and do it anyway. Jake Miller proved that the trembling hands and racing heart are not signs of weakness. They are proof that you understand the danger and choose to face it anyway. That is the highest form of courage. Subscribe for more stories of unexpected heroes. Tell us in the comments, have you ever been called afraid or weak? Sometimes the people who feel fear the deepest are the ones capable of the greatest bravery.